What is going on, everybody? FJC here, back with another finals video. And today what I got for you guys is a season 2 medium build guide. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you guys what I personally think are the best weapon and gadget setups for the medium build, and also giving you some tips on how to improve in the arena. So without wasting any more time, I really hope you guys do enjoy the video. And if you haven't yet, drop a like and a sub to the channel, as it helps me out greatly. So I want to start this video off by telling you guys the preferred setups and what I think are the meta setups for the medium build and what you should be running in high level ranked. Another thing I want to stress to you guys, if you are new players to the finals, I recommend starting out on the medium build, but don't only hold yourself to this class. In my opinion, the true way to get better at the finals is to play, learn, and understand every single class in the game. But the medium build is definitely the first class that you should play on, and the first class you should master, in my opinion. Now we're looking at the loadout screen, but before I really dive into what setups I'm using, I want to let you guys know that you can technically use any combination of weaponry and gadgets in the finals, but the loadouts that I'm going to be showing you today are primarily meta loadouts and the best in the game. We start out with the specialization, which all three of these specializations for medium are very good. The healing beam is a great tool, and in my opinion, the best one out of the three. At second, we have the Dematerializer, and then at third, we have the Guardian Turret. I personally never run the Guardian Turret, as I swap between Healing Beam and Dematerializer, but I'd say 90% of the time that I am playing medium, I am using the Healing Beam. Now we're moving on to the medium build weapons, and the number one choice for every medium as of right now should be the FCAR. And that's been that way for the first 2 seasons of the game. And the reason I said it like that is because we're now in season 2 and the weapon is still dominating. As for alternatives when it comes to weapons on the medium build, you can pretty much get away with using any single one of these. The AKM is a great choice as it has more ammo than the FCAR. The FAMAS is a burst weapon if you enjoy that, but I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I would stay away from the FAMAS entirely. The CL40 is actually a problem sometimes in game. The Magnum up close does a ton of damage, same with the model, and then the riot shield, of course, blocks bullets. But for the sake of this video, since we're talking about the best setup for medium, I would strictly stay with the FCAR. Next, we move on to gadgets, and for gadgets and the medium build, the majority of these gadgets are extremely useful. The gadget setup that you see on screen right now is considered to be a movement medic setup, and especially if you're playing a light heavy medium where you're the only person with movement gadgets, having both jump pad and zipline is extremely useful for you and your teammates. Then of course you got your healing beam so that you can heal your teammates whenever they get shot, and the last gadget would be the defibs. In my opinion, the defibs are one of the best gadgets out of all the medium build gadgets, and I run the defibs on every medium build I use. On the next medium setup we have, this is more of the aggressor medium build. Usually you'll run this setup if you have 2 mediums on your team, one running heal and you running this setup, or you have a triple medium setup with 2 healers and this setup. We start out with the Dematerializer, which is essentially Recon's replacement for medium. And if you guys aren't familiar with what Recon was, it was another specialization that was removed at the end of season 1 for season 2. And to put it in the simplest terms, Recon was literally wall hack. Now for the first gadget that we're going to use on this aggressor build, you can either run the frag grenade or the gas grenade. I personally think there's a benefit to running both of these. The frag grenade, of course, as most of you know, is an explosive, so it will cause explosive damage. It can drop teams through floors, and it will also do damage to enemy bubbles. But that's why I like to use the gas grenade, because it does a ton of damage to enemies who are playing behind a mesh shield and a bubble, because it still goes through it. For the next gadget on medium, I recommend always using a piece of movement tech, whether that be jump pad or zipline. I personally stick with the jump pad, but if you guys do have a heavy on your team, it's quite beneficial for you guys to hit a zipline and have the heavy go first, so that he can hold up his mesh shield and that blocks bullets. If you guys are looking for an alternative instead of running explosives, you can play a little more defensive for the cash out and use an APS turret, which allows you to block explosives. So now that we're in game, I just want to show everybody what an APS looks like when it's placed on the ground, who's new to the finals. You basically get this circle radius, which if any explosion comes into this circle, it'll block it. So for example, this won't block it right now because this is my APS. If I see an enemy over there and I throw the nade at the APS, Usually in game, it would explode as soon as it enters into the circle, but because we're in the practice range, it doesn't. And especially when holding cash outs, this gadget is super useful because majority of the time when teams come to retake a cash out, they're usually opening up the fight with an explosion, and this completely mitigates that. But keep in mind, this only blocks gadgets and does not block barrels. So if somebody shoots an RPG or throws a frag grenade at the APS, it'll remove it. But if they take a red barrel over there and throw it at the wall that the APS is on, it will not remove it. And another small little tip with the APS is this can be placed on the floor, walls, or the ceiling, depending on where you guys are holding or where the cash out is. If you guys think that a team is going to come above you, then the APS will also block any rocket that comes from the upper floor. So just as an example to show you guys, if I'm up here and I shoot a rocket through this radius at this enemy, it'll block it. When it comes to other gadgets in the finals, I highly recommend you guys play around with them and find out what works best for you. Personally, these are what I think are the best gadget setups and the most useful in the game. Of course, the argument can be made that all of these gadgets are useful, but I'd say a good 90% of the time, the mediums that you run into in ranked are going to be running a similar setup to what I showed you guys. So that's everything for the weapons and gadgets. Now I want to move on to general gameplay tips that I think will help your gameplay improve in the finals. So the first tip that I want to mention to you guys, and this is specifically for the aggressor medium build, is the Dematerializer should be used for both offensive and defensive plays and maneuvers. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with what the Dematerializer does, is you could walk up to walls and remove them and then place them back. And this of course, allows you to make offensive plays to where you can open up walls and see enemies. But just be careful that it's going to make it a little jagged, so it's not going to be the easiest to see the enemies, but you could still get crazy angles and have that element surprise on your enemies. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, I believe that the DMAT should be used as both an offensive and a defensive tool. And my reasoning for that is, of course, you can open up walls to get lines of sight on your enemy, but let's say you're getting padded up on by a team of 3 and you're the only guy on the roof. You can open up the floor, look back at it, close it, which makes the enemies have a harder time to reach you. And by the time you do that, you've already opened up your next floor. You get 3 uses. So this third one, you're not going to be able to close unless it recharges. But that gives you enough time to run away to another building or run away completely to regroup with your team. Now, this next tip is for anybody who plays on a team with a heavy. With the way that the game is right now, majority of the teams are running a heavy with a mesh shield and a bubble. And especially if you're using the healing beam on medium, there's no benefit to you being in front of your teammates. That's why when I play the healer, I always make sure that I'm behind or next to my heavy. Don't get me wrong, there's been plenty of times where I end up running in front of my teammates, but it ends up poorly for us. So just be aware of your surroundings and be aware of how far you guys are from each other. And the same thing could be said for your heavy teammate. You don't want your heavy teammate running too far from you. You want him to be close enough to where you can heal him, but he can also pick his own fight if he needs to. The next tip I have for you guys is understanding your weapon. And if that's any bit confusing to you, I mean, you should understand the range of your weapon, the amount of damage it does at close, medium, and long range, the weapon's recoil, and just try to genuinely look at the strengths and weaknesses of the gun itself. When it comes to the FCAR, yes, it does have high damage and kills relatively quickly, but one of the cons of the weapon is it has a low magazine count, forcing you to reload pretty often. And if you're not the most accurate player, that's not the best thing for you, as with the FCAR, you need pretty much every bullet in that magazine to hit. And the final tip, and the most important tip in my opinion that I can give you guys, is recoil control and smoothing. Now, this kind of falls into the understanding your weapon section, and I'm not going to go into too much detail because I've already made a dedicated video to this, which I'm going to link in the description. But the basics of recoil control is you would go into the practice range, let the weapon fire without controlling the gun, so you're just holding down mouse 1, and whatever direction the bullets end up going, so on the FCAR it goes slightly up and then right, you would want to go the opposite direction with your mouse. So if you're going up and right, to counter you would go down and left. After you get basic recoil control down, it's also in your best interest to implement recoil smoothing, which is essentially you strafing in one direction but also moving your mouse in the opposite. So if you're moving right, you would hold D on your keyboard but move your mouse left, while also controlling recoil. And this allows the recoil control to actually be easier than intended. And that's why, at least personally, when I'm shooting at an enemy in the finals, 90% of the time, I'm always strafing in a direction to allow recoil smoothing to make my life easier. That's everything from me for today, guys. If you guys have any tips that I didn't mention in this video that you think are valuable to the medium build, definitely leave them in the comment section down below. Once again, the recoil tutorial video will be at the top of the description. And I know since I've made that video, the FCAR's recoil pattern has changed. The clips that you saw in this video were the updated recoil pattern, and I basically talked about the same tips that I told you guys in this video, except I go into more detail, so check it out. Thank you guys so much for all the love and support over on my YouTube channel and Twitch. I do stream on both platforms daily, so if you prefer to watch on YouTube or Twitch, check it out in the description. I'm going to leave you guys with some clips for the rest of the video. Once again, I hope you did enjoy, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out. Much love. And a coin.
This way, come this way, come this way.
Time is running out.
Still here.
Or 3, that's what I meant.
The second half of this match is underway. I bet there's a hot real play on the horizon.
The Dump Films Classic, bro. You gonna watch my videos?
They have changed the recoil of this gun? Yes, they did change the recoil of the FAMAS. Or the FAMAS, the FCAR. I mean, they did...